Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, REL-MAR McConnell Media Company, their advertisers, Talkstar Radio Network, or its affiliated stations and their employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
I need a sign to let me know you're here. All of these lines are being crossed over the atmosphere. I need to know that things are gonna look up, 'cause I feel us drowning in a sea spilled from a cup. And there is no place safe and no safe place to put my head when you can feel the world shake from the words that I said. And I call it all angels. And
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to give us a call, our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My email address, xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and www.xzonetv.com. My guest this hour is MAUREEN Crethan Santora, and we're going to be talking to MAUREEN about two books that she has written based on the very heroic life of her son, who lost his life on September the 11th, 2001. Now, every American was touched in some way by the tragic events of September 11, 2001. For family and friends of nearly 3,000 people who lost their lives in the Twin Towers, the tragedy became personal. MAUREEN Crethan Santora lost her son Christopher, and now she shares her message of love and tribute with a country scared by loss. MAUREEN Crethan Santora became an educator in the New York public school system in 1967. The mother of 5 children, her only son Christopher entered the fire academy to become a firefighter in February of 2001. Christopher was one of the 345 firefighters who lost their lives at the World Trade Center on September the 11th, 2001. MAUREEN is the author of The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. All proceeds from these book sales are donated to the Christopher A. Santora Educational Scholarship Fund. And joining me now is MAUREEN Crethan Santora. And MAUREEN, welcome to the X Zone.
Hi, how are you? And I'm very glad to be online with you and to share some words about the books that I wrote.
First of all, I'd like to pass you our condolences. I know it's been a number of years now, but still, our condolences and thank you for Christopher.
Thank you very much.
Why did you write the books, dear?
Well, I wrote the books for a couple of reasons. I was an early childhood teacher for many years, and both of the books were written within the first 2 years of September 11th, and I wrote them and put them aside because I really wasn't able to, examine them or look at them. But as the years went by, several of my teacher friends commented that it was very difficult to discuss this day with their students because there was nothing that they could read or nothing that they could show that was not really horrific for the kids. And so I took a look at the books that I had written, the words that I had written, and I decided I was going to publish both of the books. The first one I wrote was The Day the Towers Fell, and my daughter Patricia was the illustrator of the book. And so it was a labor of love, for both of us, to do this. Patricia is also an early childhood teacher in New York City. But,
Maureen, you and I have to take a commercial break.
Okay.
We'll be coming right back. Thank you very much for joining us tonight and for sharing your stories with us live around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network. Maureen Crethan Santora is our special guest, Exo Nation. She is the author of The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. Her son Christopher, a New York City firefighter, died on September the 11th, 2001. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break in 2 minutes as we continue live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network.
Where were you when the world stopped turning that September day? Out in the yard, your wife and children working on some stage in L.A. Did you stand there in shock at the sight of that black smoke rising against that blue sky? Did you shout out in anger and fear for your neighbor, or did you just sit down and cry? Did you weep for the children who lost their dear loved ones? Pray for the ones who don't know. Did you rejoice for the people who walked from the rubble and sob for the ones left below? Did you burst out in pride for the red, white, and blue, the heroes who died just doing what they do? Did you look up to heaven for some kind of answer and look at yourself and what really matters? I'm just a singer of simple.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. Maureen Crethan Santora is our special guest, and Maureen is the mother of a New York City firefighter who lost his life on September the 11th in the year 2001. She has written 2 books, The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. Was it difficult for you to write these 2 stories?
Well, it was something I needed to do. When I went back after a few years to look at what I had written, it was very difficult for me to, polish up my thoughts and my words. But it was very therapeutic, I would say, to write these books. And the second one, My Son Christopher, was much harder for me to write than The Day the Towers Fell. But I felt we needed to give young people some messages and some lessons that we all should have from this terrible event. And from the Day the Towers Fell, I wanted students to know that hatred is a terrible thing, and I wanted them to have an idea of what hatred looked like without it being so graphic and horrific for them, but to know that when we are hateful in our deeds, terrible things happen, and there's a kind of a rippling effect, and so we need to find ways to resolve conflicts, in our own lives, in our playground activities, in, classrooms, and we need to be able to resolve our, feelings of hatred and find a way, to become more peaceful. And the second book was written, it was my heart and soul, writing about my son and writing about the fact that he wasn't a perfect person and that he got into trouble in school, but no matter what he did, I loved him unconditionally because he was my son, and that's the repetitive language in the book, that I loved him no matter what he did, and I wanted children to know that their parents love them unconditionally, even if they sometimes mess up. That
Sure.
Parents are there for them, and part of their job is to reprimand them and to tell them what is right and wrong, so that they will learn. But that no matter what they do, no matter how many times they mess up, their parents are always in their corner and they love them. So that was the message that I wanted students to have, and I felt that we needed to have something that teachers could hold, that parents could hold, and to read to kids or to have the kids read themselves, so that they would gain an understanding of what happened on September 11th.
Maureen, how did your daughters feel about illustrating the books?
Well, they had a tough time. They both of the daughters that did the illustrations, Patricia majored in art in college, and Megan was just a child that loved art. She just loved art, and so when I asked them if they would be interested, of course they said yes immediately. But they had a tough time, drawing some of the pictures and kind of reliving, the events as I had written them down. And to their credit, they continued, and they were very analytical, and took a long time, to do this, and we, edited it and changed it and everything. But they're very, very proud of the fact that they were able to do this, and I'm very proud that they were the illustrators for the books. I'm very proud that it was a family, team working together.
Family effort.
Yes.
A family effort as a tribute to your son, someone who ran into danger while everyone else was running away from it.
Yes, and all firefighters are the same throughout the world. We've traveled, to many places, and they're the unsung heroes. They're the guys who stop, for accidents, on the road, or they stop and help somebody who's tripped on the street, and they never expect any kind of, accolades ever, and they're embarrassed, when you call them a hero, and the firefighters who survived felt tremendously guilty that they were not there on that day, but they're just incredibly wonderful human beings, and there are many of them around the world, and they share a deep feeling and concern for their fellow men, and so my son wouldn't have done anything else, he would have chosen to do this regardless of what, the cost it might have had to him, and every other firefighter who died on that day would have done the same thing over again.
Maureen, did Christopher want to be a firefighter when he was a little guy?
Yes, he did. From the time earliest time I can remember, my husband was in the fire department for over 4 years, and he retired as a deputy chief in New York City, and I think maybe that had something to do with it, and I also think the fact that Christopher was surrounded by sisters, kind of, helped him to lead toward a job that, in New York City anyway, is primarily male-based, but whatever the reason, he wanted to be a firefighter. We have fire trucks. I still have them. My grandchildren play with them even today, and it was, he thought firefighters were just heroes and wonderful and brave, and he wanted to be like them. So he fulfilled his dream, and at 23, I think that's quite an accomplishment.
It certainly is. Your husband, being a former deputy chief for this New York City Fire Department, what was his feelings about the book that you wrote the day the towers fell?
Well, he was very pleased that I had done this, and Al had retired in 2000 because of an injury, but he had wanted to stay on to be with his son and help him, help to see that he became part of the firefighters in New York City, but that did not happen, and he was very angry, after September 11th, and so this was a way for us to kind of, explain in a horrific way what actually happened on the day, and to provide some, educational tools, and I was very pleased. He was very, very supportive, and I was very involved in this for a while, and he was just very good to me. I'm very grateful, that he, stood by me and supported me, and felt that this was an important project.
What are your hopes about those who read your books?
Well, what I do hope for students and parents and teachers and anybody who does read the book is that they learn several things. Number one, that hatred is a terrible thing, and that in our world we need to be less hateful, just around the world, and that life can be very short, and we need to be grateful for each and every day, and tell the people that we love them each and every day, and that we're very happy that they're in our lives, and not to take things for granted. And, we often, when we're younger, we think we're going to live forever. And certainly my son felt that way, and I certainly did not anticipate, that he would have died at, 23 years old. But that's the way it was. And so we had to deal with that, and we also, had to make some sense of why this happened. And I still don't know, how anybody could have been this hateful, but they were. And, families were really torn apart by this entire event. So I hope people become more aware of the gifts that they have. And the greatest gift we have is a good family and people who love us, and we need to be appreciative of them.
I think people will become appreciative because of people like you sharing your heart, sharing your feelings, sharing your love, sharing your joy, and also sharing your sadness. You're one brave woman.
Thank you very much. I'm a very big believer that, God provides for us and gives us the strength we need in adversity, and I've been given the gift of a good faith, and so I do believe that. But, there were many times when I was just a mess and I, fell apart, but I kind of knew that I would be given the strength to continue, and there was a reason for me to think about writing these books and to write the books, and I just hope that, people, when they do read them, are touched by, the stories, and also, that they, adapt some of the lessons that I hope, will be part of the ends of both of these books.
Maureen, you and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour.
Okay.
How can people get copies of your book?
Well, we have a website. All of the profits of these books will be going to the Christopher Santora Educational Scholarship Fund. So
what is your website, dear?
The website is www.christophersantora.com. And the books can be ordered on the website.
That's www.christophersantora.com.
That's correct, yes.
Maureen, stand by. You and I will be back on the other side of the news. Thank you very much for joining us tonight here on the X-Zone.
Thank you so much.
Maureen Crethan Santora is our special guest. She's the author of 2 books, The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. They're available at her website, www.christophersantora.com. That's Christopher, and Santora is spelled Santora.com. Christopher Santora was one of the firefighters who gave his life on September the 11th, 2001, the day the towers fell. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue speaking with Maureen Crethan Santora, right here live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away, X-Zone Nation. We'll be back after the news.
I came back from a weekend with the boys, took one look at my wife, and couldn't believe my eyes. Her face was so smooth. It was like she turned the clock back 10 years.
I look at her.
no more crow's feet, and her frown lines disappeared. It's amazing.
Do you want to know the secret to smoother skin, less wrinkles, and no more dark circles? Introducing Icera, the clinically proven skincare serum that rolls on. Icera is designed to treat even the toughest wrinkles, crow's feet, and even eliminates dark circles and under-eye puffiness. Want to try it yourself? Well, now you can. Risk-free. That's right. Roll away wrinkles with Icera. It's guaranteed to work for you. Even the ones closest to you won't believe their eyes.
I still can't believe the difference a couple of days made.
So what are you waiting for? Roll away wrinkles and roll back the clock. Call today for your risk-free trial of Icera. 888-368-3943. 888-368-3943. That's 888-368-3943.
Douglas James Cottrell, who has been called Canada's Edgar Casey, has just made available his latest CD, Douglas Cottrell 2012 Earth Changes, the first CD in the 2012 Prophecy series. This session features information gathered from the Akashic Records in a deep trance meditation session by Douglas James Cottrell in March of 2009. In this session, Douglas explains changes that have taken place in the Earth's core, changes to the Earth's poles, and the real reason why the polar caps are melting. Douglas also elaborates on increased volcanic and earthquake activity between now and 2012, including what, where, and when. To order your copy of Douglas Cottrell 2012 Earth Changes, visit his website at douglasjamescottrell.com or call toll-free 877-COTTREL.
You're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. Visit us online at www.xzoneradio.com.
Every time I see your face, it reminds me of the places we used to go.
Hi, this is Eric Rawls of Cosmoverse.com, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X Zone.
Hi, this is Blade Runner, and you are listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, I'm Laura Sabrin of Feast to Fields Organic Vineyards in Jordan, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Hi, my name is Lady Ashley, the White Witch of Niagara-on-the-Lake, and you're listening to Canada's #1 paranormal talk radio show, The X Zone, with Rob McConnell.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
We've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
American pride.
When American suffers, we as a Congress stand united.
Something you feel inside.
Today's despicable acts.
Something you can't describe.
Were an assault on our people.
American pride.
And on our freedom.
This is a vicious attack upon New York. It's an attack upon America. It's an attack upon the whole concept of freedom and our way of life.
And no one should doubt America's resolve.
American pride. Yes, it
the staff has been doing a heroic job.
Something you feel inside.
They can destroy buildings.
Something you can't describe.
They can kill people.
Something you can't.
They will never be allowed to kill the spirit of democracy.
Make no mistake, the United States will hunt down
something you feel inside
and punish those responsible
traditions run deep and wide
for these cowardly acts. We will do whatever is necessary to protect America.
When a baby is born, we all...
Welcome back to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. We're coming to you live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and around the world on our family of broadcast affiliates across Canada, the United States, Central America, the Caribbean, South America, the Pacific Rim, 22 Asian countries, and Europe. Our toll-free number is 1-877-528-8255. That is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My email address is xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and xzonetv.com. My guest this hour is MAUREEN Crethan Santora. She is the author of The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. Her son Christopher was a New York City firefighter who died on 9/11. Now, all the proceeds from these books are donated to the Christopher A. Santora Educational Scholarship Fund, X-Zone Nation. The website is, now please, take this website down. And if you've got young children at home and you've never had the right words to say or the right way to say them, to explain to your children about the horrific events of September the 11th, 2001, these two books will help. The website is www.christophersantora.com. That's www.christophersantora.com. Now, Santora is spelled Santora. So that's ChristopherSantora.com. MAUREEN, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and welcome back to the X-Zone.
Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad to be back.
Now, MAUREEN, I was wondering if you could share with our listening audience your background.
All right. Well, I was a school teacher in New York City for 27 years. I stopped for 9 years to raise my 5 children, and for most of my career, I was an early childhood teacher. So I was in grades from pre-K to grade 2. That was the focus of my time in in school. But I also worked with kids up to grade 6, and worked in 4th grade and special education, and so I had a wide range of opportunities, and that kind of kept me focused and up to date on things. I really loved being with the kids. Children just bring me tremendous joy. They're just they are who they are. They are honest. They are direct. They call a spade a spade. It's just joyous to be around them. And so I had a wonderful career being around young people who just gave me so much, each day. And I really loved my job. I ended my career as a staff developer, and in New York City, that position is it's not actually an administrative position, but you're not in the classroom, and you go into classrooms and you work with teachers that, need to hone in on particular skills, or, so I was a support person for the teachers, and I was in the classrooms with the students and gave demonstration lessons and so forth, and that's how I ended my tenure, in the public school system. I retired in July of 2001 for all the right reasons. My husband had retired, and I felt that it was time for me to, do some other things. Even though I loved the job, I had no idea that September 11th would have occurred, and I would have had to have left the system and would have been very, very distraught, leaving a job that I really loved because of this terrible event. But I was spared, and I retired for the right reasons, and, I still go into schools and do reading, days and, speak to staff and stuff, and so I'm still involved in a non-regimented way.
I'd like to ask you a question, MAUREEN, and if it is too hard for you, please be honest and just say, Rob, I'd rather not answer that.
Okay.
What were you doing on September the 11th, 2001, when the towers fell?
Well, it was my first day of retirement. It was the first day back, to school from the school children. As I said, I retired in July of 2001, and so the first day back was September 11th. And I was expecting, the champagne and strawberries and, and just a wonderful first day. And our apartment in Astoria faces Manhattan, and so we saw the Twin Towers every day. And my son-in-law called us and said, one of the Twin Towers have been hit. Get up and take a look out the window. And we did, and of course we saw the flames, coming from Tower 1. And as we were looking out the window, we saw another plane going around tower number 2, and then we saw the plane hit the tower. And I guess, initially you just didn't believe that this was happening. My son was supposed to be coming home from work. He had worked the night before, and I just assumed he was on his way home. Mm-hmm. And we got a call at about 9:15 from his lieutenant asking that he return back to work. And both my husband and I knew that he was down, at the site, or was on his way down to the site. And that first day, you just didn't believe what was happening. You were just in a state of, shock. I was convinced that Christopher had survived, as most families, who were not, they did not have, family members either in the airplanes or on the point of impact. Most family members would have told you that their children and their loved ones had survived. So I was one of them, and I just was convinced Christopher was going to come home. And of course that didn't happen. But you were just dazed. And that's the only word that I can say to you. You just didn't believe that this had happened. And then subsequently, as the days went into weeks and the weeks went into months, you realized that, the person wasn't coming out. But the kindness of strangers got us through. And, you had a song, at the break, about you can't break the spirit of democracy.
That's right.
The spirit of America. And I have to tell you that the kindness of strangers got us through every day. We received so many letters and little cards from children and blankets and quilts, and I have everything. I've saved everything. I cherish everything. But that's what got us through, was the kindness of strangers.
I personally believe that on September the 11th, 2001, is the day that America became one nation.
Yes, I agree.
Why was it important to you to target the elementary school audience?
Well, I really, felt that there was a lot of information for high school students. And, when you get into high school, you've done an awful lot of reading about topics that are really not so nice, and that's important in learning about history and about the world, past and present. And you're able to, incorporate that. But for young children, this has changed their world forever. Yeah. We're no longer in a world, where people are not more, they're much more watchful now than they used to be. My children grew up in a much freer environment where people were more trusting and they were more, carefree in a lot of ways. Well, the young today are not in that kind of world anymore, and I really wanted them to have an idea of, what had happened, and I wanted to write about it in a way that would not be terrifying, but that would give a message that, in our little world, in our classroom, with our family, with our friends, if we say meaningful things, they have rippling effects that sometimes continue for a long time. And so we need, in our own selves, to be less hateful as human beings. And so that's the message that I wanted the children to have, that this event occurred because people had tremendous hatred in their heart against a group of individuals that they never knew, that they knew very little about, that they made assumptions about. And I wanted young children to know that in their own little, world, they could be responsible for making a better place to live.
That's beautiful.
Thank you, but that's how I feel, and so I felt I needed to target the young because they're the ones that are going to be the change makers.
They are, and teachers like you and members of the educational system are going to change the world. Why Now, let me ask you this question. How do you want people to remember September 11, 2001?
Well, I want people to remember September 11th as first of all, a very defining event in our history, in the world history. The world came together on September 11th. It was a terrible day from the point that so many people died, and they died, just going about their business. And so that in itself was a terrible thing. But I also want people to know that there were many lessons that came out of September 11th. There were many things that people who ordinarily didn't do these things did after September 11th. People were more patient. They were more tolerant. There was an outpouring of love and affection to all of us who had been immediately involved in this. And those are the good things, and those are the kind things. And I think those were the things that Al-Qaeda never expected to happen. And they did, and the world came together, and we became a unified, world for quite a while. We're now beginning to, forget a little bit, and I want people to always remember that the capability of being united is there, because it came together on September 11th and after in those early days. And so I want people to know that they can take this terrible event and do something positive. Recently, our Congress passed, a law stating that September 11th will now be forever a day of service. Well, we all should be doing service in our little communities when we can. We should be doing things to help our neighbors to make the world a better place. And we don't need to have a Congress, or we don't need to have, a administrator or an executive tell us what to do. We know what to do. Sometimes we forget or put that aside, and we do some other things, but we need to make these acts of kindness a habit.
What can we do to honor the victims of 9/11?
Well, I think we can remember them and learn about them and try to read their stories and, get information about them and work very hard to make the world a better place. I think that's the best honor that we can give these victims. Substituting meanness with kindness, is something that no hate-filled group can overturn.
Maureen, you and I have to take our final break. Please stand by. Maureen Crethan Santora is our very special guest. She's the author of 2 books, X-Zone Nation, The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. All proceeds from the sale of the books will be going to the Christopher A. Santora Educational Scholarship Fund. To get your copy of either The Day the Towers Fell or My Son Christopher, go to www.christophersantora.com. That's christophersantora.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break as the X-Zone continues on Talkstar.
Choosing someone to help guide you through deep financial waters is an important as well as very personal decision. Let me tell you good news. You have a friend in the loan business who is sincerely anxious to help you when you need it. The toll-free number, in case you ever do need it, is 1-866-464-1800. There'll be an interested, caring, and friendly voice at the other end of the line when you call Prime Pacific Capital. I know it's not every day you need advice on consolidating credit cards or getting a home loan or getting a lower interest rate, but when you do need help, that's no time to take chances. Call 1-866-464-1800 or visit www.talkstarradio.com. Call 1-866-464-1800 and introduce yourself to your friend in the money business. But don't ask for free samples. I already tried that. It doesn't work. Call 1-866-464-1800.
Are you getting tired of all the bad news? Well, then take a break from the worries of the world and play the love game. It's time to focus on what is really important in our lives, our relationships. You deserve more love, happiness, and harmony in your life. Synchro Hearts is the new hot relationship game that guarantees more love, laughter, and romance for you and your partner. It's not a sex game, it's a love game based on all the important relationship stuff like better communication, more intimacy, and lots of fun and excitement. Great intimacy is just one of the benefits of playing Synchro Hearts. Now, President Obama inspires hope, love, and peace for the world. Synchro Hearts offers more hope, love, and harmony for relationships. To order your very own edition of Synchro Hearts, visit Synchro Hearts' website now at www.syncrohearts.com. That's www.syncrohearts.com. Synchro Hearts. It's the game you love to play and play to love.
It's been a year, Daddy. I really, really miss you. Mommy says we're safe now in a beautiful place called heaven.
Oh, thinking about our younger years.
We have your favorite dinner tonight.
I was only you and me.
I ate it all up,
Young and wild and free.
even though I don't like carrots.
Now nothing can take you away from me.
I learned how to swim this summer.
We've been down that road before.
I can even open my eyes
That's over now.
when I'm underwater.
You may come in back for more.
Can't you see me?
Baby, you're all that I want. And you're lying here in my
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. Our special guest this hour is MAUREEN Crethan Santora. She is the author of The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. Christopher was a New York City firefighter who lost his life on September the 11th, 2001. MAUREEN, what are some of the lessons we learned from that hate-filled day?
What are some of the lessons we learned?
Yes.
I think we learned that we have more commonality among us in the world than we do differences. I think that we learned that there were many people who care deeply about what happens to others. I think we learned that we are vulnerable, and that there are people in the world who are evil and try to do harm to others just because. And so we need to protect ourselves and be vigilant and, be watchful. But I feel that the human spirit and the generosity and the kindness far overran the hatred and the devastation. I saw more good come out of this event than I did bad. I was devastated. I know my son is around and he's still watching over me and taking care of me and stuff. But I don't get a chance to hug him anymore and give him a kiss and tell him to his face that I love him, although I tell him every day. I don't know, why he was one of the ones, but I certainly wouldn't wish somebody else to be, in the situation. So I think, we came together as a world, and I was very, very overwhelmed by the kindness. I was just overwhelmed, and I am still overwhelmed at the kindness of strangers. And we're a very resilient people. We are a resilient people, and I think that will help us to be successful. I hope so, anyway.
MAUREEN, I want to thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been a great pleasure talking to you. And from all the X-Zone Nation, thank you for sharing your story with us here tonight. And our love and our prayers are with you all.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you, too. It was really quite enjoyable.
It's our great pleasure. No, ma'am. Thank you. God bless.
MAUREEN
Crethan Santora, Exonation. She is the mother of Christopher Santora, a New York City firefighter who lost his life on September the 11th, 2001. She's written 2 books about the event, The Day the Towers Fell and My Son Christopher. Both these books are available at www.christophersantora.com. That's www.christophersantora.com. And all proceeds from these books are donated to the Christopher A. Santora Educational Scholarship Fund. When I come back from this commercial break at 6.5 minutes past with the news, we're going to be talking about a very strange event at Fort Benning, Georgia.